You're listening to Coming of Cage, a Nicolas Cage podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Coming of Cage podcast, the Nick Cage podcast, where we talk about nothing but Nicolas Cage movies throughout his entire career, all 100 plus credits to his name. I am Derek. I am one of your two hosts in this first episode of the show. And I've got my buddy here, Ryan, and we're just going to introduce ourselves real quick.
Hi.
Hi, Ryan. Why don't you introduce yourselves to all of our listeners?
Hi, I'm Ryan.
Awesome. It's beautiful. It's great.
Yeah.
And why did you want to talk on this show?
Oh, well, I just mostly like the sound of my own voice,
but
also, I'm a Nick Cage fan, and Derek and I, Dare Bear, as I like to call him, we did a little show with a friend of ours and a wife of his that did a few episodes of movie reviews and things like that. And it came up many times how big of a Nick Cage fan I am. And so, with the terror of COVID and everything else, we kind of had to stop that show, and we both missed it. So we decided to, maybe why not? We'll just worship at the altar of our one true God, Nick Cage, and make a podcast in his name. Amen.
Yeah, I mean, similar story for me. I like Nick Cage a lot, I think The Rock was the first Nick Cage movie I ever saw, just because of Sean Connery initially. But I mean, let's be fair, who's the real star of the show? But, when our old podcast ended, I was like, well, I want to keep doing something with Ryan. So what can I pitch him that he'll have a really hard time saying no to?
Is that how it went? I don't remember exactly like that, but hey, that's your version, and I like it.
Yeah, that's what I'm sticking to. To it.
The movie for me was Con Air. When I was a kid, I had this tiny 13-inch TV with a built-in VCR.
Ooh.
And it was badass at that age because I'm old. And I had a VHS of Con Air, and I watched that crap so many times, and it's deeply embedded in my heart now because of that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair. I don't think I've ever owned a Nick Cage movie on VHS.
Yeah.
I think they're all DVDs or newer.
Now you need to rectify that.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah. I'm sure there's still some around. But probably. So our first episode, we are actually talking about his latest release, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, which released this past April 2022. And we saw it together.
Yeah, and I think this is a good one to start out the podcast with, because it references a lot of his older works that we'll be reviewing throughout the series. So I mean, I think it's a great way to start out. Some of the movies they referenced, I haven't even seen yet, so it'll be cool to see how that ties in. But yeah, I think this is a great way to start. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's almost a little overwhelming how many movies of his I haven't seen. I felt like I knew him pretty well. And then I started looking at his catalog, and there's just a wealth of movies.
We've only seen the bangers, I think, for the most part. I've seen a few of the obscure ones that I'm not really excited about revisiting, but I don't know. There was one I saw on Hulu. I'm not even going to mention the title of because we'll watch it later, but it had him in it for 7 minutes, but he was the headliner. So I don't know. That was
that his rough. Godzilla? Is that
no.
What happened?
I don't know. Maybe you can call it that, but it was something. Yeah. Can't wait to review that one.
Looking forward to it.
Oh yeah. But that episode will be 8 minutes long, which is probably longer than his screen time.
Well, then it'll be worth it then. We'll really dive into the details of this,
right. Of his
that
performance.
Yeah.
I like it.
So, so The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. So going into this movie, I expected a lot of caginess. I expected it to be out there. I expected it to be kind of loony because the concept is crazy. So for those who don't know what the concept is, he's playing a fictionalized version of himself, right? Who kind of is leaning into the stereotypes of Nick Cage. So he's, got lots of debt and he needs money, and he, is kind of in financial trouble, and somebody wants to hire him to show up to his birthday party for $1 million. And this guy is just a Nick Cage super fan. And then they have escapades together. That's kind of how the movie was pitched.
Yeah.
Right. And boy, is it so different. So, I mean, I guess spoiler alert for anybody. We're reviewing the movie. So if you haven't seen it and you care, maybe pause and come back. But it's so, I mean, did you think it was going to be as crazy as it was? Was I just like missing?
It got a little crazier than I thought it was going to, but not a lot. I mean, just the premise kind of says what it's going to be. It was a lot, but I expected it to be a lot, and in a good way. So I don't know. It's similar to what I expected.
Okay. I didn't realize how meta it was really going to get. So, and it's meta in a bunch of different ways, right? So you got the Nicky character. So Nick Cage actually plays two versions of himself. He plays his fictionalized self, and then he plays an imaginary version of himself that he talks to named Nicky, which, fun fact, he's credited as Nicky under his actual legal name, not Nicolas Cage, which is kind of cool. But the Nicky character, I actually expected to see more of, but I feel like, I don't know, it was there. There's one scene in particular, which I think is just the most kind of crazy Nick Cage steering into himself process, which is the making out with himself scene in the bar.
Right.
How did you feel about that?
Aroused, confused, questioning my identity, wondering who the second Cage was in that scene. Like in real life when they were filming it.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of weird feelings with that. The follow-up part that happens immediately after was wonderful, delightful. Just, him yelling, Nick Cage smooch is good, or whatever he said,
Yep.
Something like that, was just amazing.
I mean, that's what I was thinking of calling this episode, is Nick Cage smooches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of a spoiler, but
I mean, a little bit. He could have kissed anybody. You don't know.
It's true. I mean, the Nicky character was interesting, but I don't know. I feel like the movie would have been fine without that character. It didn't need to really be there. It was great, and it gave you what you wanted, which was a little of the crazy parts of Cage, But I tended to prefer the more like serious parts where he was like reflecting. The fictional version of himself was reflecting on his fictional, but also real videography, or however you want to call it, his history of movie making. Those were the parts that I think I liked the most personally. But the Nicky character was a little bothersome for me, mainly because of the CG for the face. There was definitely some uncanny valley there that, I know it was not the highest budget movie. In fact, it was probably a pretty low budget movie, but if that's the case, then they probably should have gone a different route with that. But yeah, it was a little distracting. Maybe it'll look better on video or streaming when it comes out versus the big screen. A lot of times CG does look better on a smaller screen, but
yeah, I mean, because they picked a pretty young age for that Nicky character. Like, even I think if they had even gone with Con Air, or if they had gone with National Treasure or something like that, I think it would have been a little smoother, but they went like really young.
Yeah.
And so it's just it kind of got that shininess to it, that smoothness to it. That's not quite natural.
Right.
But I like the concept a lot, because, what it kind of plays on that concept of a lot of the times we're our own worst enemy. Right. And at least I feel like that's what they were trying to get at, that he's in his own way all the time, that he's making poor decisions for himself, and he needs to break out of that cycle and make better decisions. And that Nicky character is that part of him, that's that voice in the back of your head, that's the one you shouldn't be listening to, right? That's telling you to do the immature stuff, right? The things that, maybe you did in high school or college or your early 20s or whatever, and you grew out of that. He needed to kind of grow out of the Nicky character. But
See, I thought the growth more came from Javi
mm,
and like seeing, he basically got a visualization of his entire career with Javi, who was a mega fan and loved every movie he's ever been in, and seeing somebody worship him like that, basically, and how much it impacted his life, gave him the reflection that he needed. I thought, more so than Nikki did. Nikki seemed like more of like a thing just to have the fans connect with that, what they really want in the movie, which is crazy caginess.
mm.
But I don't think that was the most important part of the movie, personally.
Well, I mean, my favorite parts were the Cage Javi interactions.
Absolutely.
That bromance was just so wonderful, and Pedro is just a freaking delight in this movie, just across the board. Like, I know this is a Nick Cage show and all, but man, is he a wonderful co-star, Pedro, in this movie. But you're right, he kind of forces those conversations, and while his decision making isn't always the best, like flying Nick Cage's movie wife and daughter to Spain without telling him, not maybe the best decision in the world, but his heart was in the right place,
Yeah.
But those, man, that the two of them, the chemistry that they have, those two actors, really, it just really came through. I loved, from the moment they're together, that's all I really wanted to see, was just more of the two of them. Like when they're high on drugs, when they take that as LSD, I think, right? When they take the LSD and they think they're being followed. And of course there's the wall scene that's in the trailer. But then there's the car chase. Well, they're not actually being chased. Right. But it was so fun. And it felt to me like these two have been doing movies together for years.
I thought that was really good because, you're kind of, when Javi is trying to convince Nick Cage not to retire, I think is what was going on. But when he takes him to the cliffs or whatever, and he's trying to role play with him, and get it, or improv, or, whatever. I'm sure there's an acting term for whatever was happening there. But
I think Nick says it.
Yeah, exactly. But then finally Nick starts embracing it. And after that, Javi gets to play out all these Nick Cage fantasies that he has, but he isn't actually, like, I don't know. He's like so high and screwed up that it's not a game to him in those moments. Like, he's not even getting to like embrace those moments as a fan, because he's, in his mind, these are really happening and he's terrified, so he doesn't really get the full enjoyment that you want him to get out of these things, because they're too real to him, which I thought was interesting. It started off with this like joking to get him into a mindset, and then it continues to be something much more serious. But those are the best moments in the movie for sure. Yeah, Pedro Pascal is great, and I should stop being surprised when he's great, and I shouldn't even have to comment it anymore, because he's essentially been great in everything I've seen him in.
Yeah.
I mean, I just very much admire him, and the chemistry was, like you said, just delightful to watch. And even that cut scene that that I shared with you, that came out after we saw the movie, that one was great too. We were both like, why was this not in the movie? Because all we wanted was more of that. At the end of the movie, we would just wish we had gotten more Javi, more Nick together, Well,
because like Javi has to basically be like this giddy little kid who's meeting his idol.
Yeah.
Except that he's also like, a 40-year-old millionaire.
Yeah. And he has to he's been ordered to kill his idol, and,
well, that's later. That's a lot.
Right.
Later,
but I mean, throughout the movie, it's just, it's a ramp that he has to go up and down and up and down. He has these highs and these lows, and it's definitely fun to watch.
I would say, so let me ask you this. At any point, did you really think Javi kidnapped the girl at any point?
No.
Okay.
Didn't buy it.
I didn't either. And I'm wondering if that's good or bad. What were we never meant to really believe it, or did the character not go
I don't
that?
think we were supposed to believe it, because you don't see a lot of Javi by himself. You see a lot of Javi with Nick. So we're meant to see why Nick trusts Javi, and seeing Javi through Nick's eyes, essentially. So I don't think we were really meant to ever doubt that he was good. And, when that gets introduced, that he's a bad guy, and Nick gets introduced to the fact that he's a bad guy, we're left questioning, but really I never questioned. I don't know. I don't think it was intended that we were supposed to question it. Or I think at the very least they wanted us to hope that he wasn't a bad guy, kind of like Nick did in the movie. He didn't want him to be a bad guy. He wanted it all to be wrong and him to be a good guy, because he uses acting sense to establish that he knows more than the CIA or whatever, Homeland Security, whoever it was that he was dealing with. And they made a joke about that. But then it turns out he's not actually the bad guy,
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite moments is when Nick is supposed to go check out that room with like the glass door, mirror doors, and he can't get it unlocked. And of course, Pedro shows up. This is right after the LSD scene, actually, and Pedro's passed out in the car. And when Javi shows up, he's like, if you go in there, it's going to change how you feel about me. I don't want it to change how you feel about me. I don't want you, all this other stuff. He's like, he's so worried about what's going to happen. And I was like, oh, this is the Nick Cage room. This has got to be the Nick Cage room.
Yeah. I knew it was definitely the Nick Cage room also. They spoiled that in the trailer.
Oh, okay. I must have missed that.
But no, I mean, they didn't spoil that exactly in the trailer, but by showing us the Nick Cage room in the trailer, it was very easy to piece together that that's what this is going to be.
I loved how they introduced it though. So when they cut to the inside, it's still dark. All you can first see is an outline of the National Treasure poster. And, just because of like when National Treasure came out, like obviously it's not his best work, right? But I watched that movie a ton when it first came out because I love Indiana Jones and I really like Nick Cage, and it felt like a balance between those two things. So I watched a lot of the first National Treasure movie. And so when I saw that, I cracked up. Like I couldn't help it. It was just, that was such a great way to introduce this room.
Yeah.
Right. And the room is so ridiculous. Like he's got crazy stuff. He's got one of those pillows, that, you rub it one way and it's Nick Cage's face, and you rub it the other way and it goes away. And Nick's like, well, that's creepy. And Javi's all offended. It's not. And he fixes up the pillow. And it's just.
Your wife has offered to get me that pillow, I think, about a dozen times over the course of our friendship, or threatened to get it for me would be a better term. I'm not really sure at this point, but yeah, that room was great. Seeing Nick Cage react to like what a room of a Nick Cage superfan would be like, although there was a lot of stuff that I wish they would have had in the room that they didn't. But seeing him offer to buy the statue with the guns was pretty funny. But as a prop collector, some of you may not know this about me if you didn't listen to Screen Heroes, but I collect movie props, and so I follow a lot of the values on these things. If those were the actual guns that he used in Face Off, $20,000 is a very insulting offer. So he would have paid a lot more for those than what he was offered by Nick Cage. So Nick Cage in the movie clearly doesn't have any idea of the value of the things that he's used.
Well, I thought he was just offering to buy the mannequin that's made to look like him.
I mean, maybe it's kind of ambiguous, but I feel like it was the whole thing with the guns and everything else.
Gotcha.
Well, I mean, what else? Is he just going to buy a mannequin with his arms out like this?
Well, he can get his own prop guns. He's Nick Cage.
That's true.
Right? Like,
he has a dinosaur skull. What does it matter?
Exactly.
He can get a gun.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
True.
But that mannequin, of course, lines up a wonderful scene later on where they show the reflection of current Nick Cage over the younger Nick Cage. It's a very face-off kind of moment, and it's totally telegraphed, but it's still wonderful. Yeah, and
if I remember right, they did a similar shot in Face Off where like the camera pans over to like a reflection, like there's a double or a single-sided glass or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you get that same kind of effect in that movie with John Travolta and Nick Cage's face. So yeah, that was really nice to see. And it was a little heavy-handed, but they really wanted the people who aren't as observant to pick up on that, which is fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. It was obvious enough that I was like making the face-off motion to Derek in the theater when it was happening. But yeah, I did like that moment.
I mean, this movie is mostly just a celebration of his career in a lot of ways. And, maybe it's fan servicey, right? It's fan service. There's no question about it. But that's the point in this movie, is to show that fan service, because that's who Javi is, right? That's what Javi wants. Javi wants all of that fan service, and we're getting it as the audience. So I think it works here. I think, in another movie that doesn't really work out, but this is supposed to be meta and over the top and very sarcastic at times, so it works.
Right. No, I agree. Yeah, I mean, it was a celebration of Nick Cage's career, and I'm totally on board for that. That's the reason why I want to see it.
Mhm.
You know, have you ever seen My Name is Bruce?
No.
So this is, if you haven't heard of My Name is Bruce, this is a movie that Bruce Campbell did. I don't even know when, but it was basically about the actor Bruce Campbell as a fictional character going to a town where they were having like a horror convention or a Bruce Campbell convention or something, and real deadites or something similar come out, and these people expect him to save them. It's a lot. It's very similar in concept to this movie. If you like Bruce Campbell and you liked this movie, I would definitely recommend checking that one out. This movie was I only brought it up because this movie was executed much better, I think, than that movie was. That movie was, I don't know. I think Bruce Campbell has a little bit more of a cult following than Nick Cage does. It's not as mainstream. He hasn't caught on to the meme culture as much as Nick Cage has. So, you know, it had that going against it. But I think that this movie executed that whole concept much better. And those are really the only two movies where I've seen that kind of a concept played out. And it's always interesting to me to see that, seeing the actor play a fictionalized version of themselves. This was much more like caricaturized version of Nick Cage than the version of Bruce Campbell was in that movie.
Well, I think in this comparison, it helps showcase that, like, you know, Bruce Campbell, and I love Bruce Campbell and I love the Evil Dead stuff, but that's what he's known for. He's known for Ash Williams. That's the character that he is truly known for. Nick Cage, you know, he gets a lot of crap, and it's even referenced in the movie, right? That he's working too much, that he does too many movies. And at the same time, though, we know him for so many iconic characters because he's done a lot of really big action films that people remember, right? The Rock, Con Air, National Treasure, Ghost Rider, Face Off, all of those movies, people know those. And those are all different characters in different films. And so regardless of which Cage is your favorite, there's a lot to choose from. And this movie just steers totally into all of that. You know, and it does answer some of those criticisms too. I like that it answered that criticism because, you know, I'm sure that I've poked fun at actors like him and others who have put out 6 movies in a year because it feels like, how could they possibly have the time to do that? But he sees this as his work. It's his job. It's how he makes money and pays his bills and yada, yada, yada. So why is it bad if he does a lot of it? Right. And I liked that the movie just straight up was like, yeah, it doesn't matter that he does it a lot. That's what he likes to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's good that they addressed it as well. And I was happy to hear that. But I think you'll see why how he was able to do 6 movies a year as we get through this list and you get to some of the more obscure movies. I'm not going to say he phones it in. I've never seen a movie where he phones anything in. That's one thing I'll always say about Nick Cage. And one of the reasons why I love him so much is that he always gives 100%, even if it's like a 7 minutes of screen time movie. He's always going to, in that 7 minutes, do his best to bring something different and memorable into it. So, but yeah, you'll see how he's able to do 6 movies or however many movies a year, I think, as we go through, as will I, because I will be getting a refresher course and some new introductions on that too. But
well, I think a lot of it, you know, is scale, right? Like, you know, he doesn't do these major ensemble films that have a dozen characters that they have to coordinate schedules for, that have a bunch of post-production via, you know, VFX and months of reshoots and things like that. He doesn't tend to take those types of roles. You know, whether he's offered them or not, I don't know, right? But he doesn't tend to take those roles.
Well, and more recently, he's done, you know, some voice acting stuff too. So that isn't nearly as, you know, he can record his lines for that in much less time than it takes to film scenes for a movie. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
So one thing that this movie kind of obsesses a little bit about that, you know, it's kind of out of left field is Paddington 2. Have you ever seen a Paddington movie, Ryan?
No. Oh, but I did have a Paddington Bear toy as a child.
Oh,
and a Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah,
which is similar vein.
Teddy. Yeah, I had a Teddy Ruxpin. I haven't seen the Paddington movies either, but I'll tell you what, it kind of made me want to watch Paddington 2.
Well, you have a child, so you can watch it and have it not be weird.
I don't know. Javi and Cage watched it together and seemed to really, you know, appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe that's our next movie night.
That'll be your solo episode of this show.
That hurts. We'll see. You know,
I'm not much into kids movies in general.
Maybe it's more than that, Ryan. Maybe it's more
Well,
than that.
the world will never know.
or you'll never know.
Well, a little bit of both.
So the movie kind of gets even more meta at the tail end, right? Because so the crux of it is that Javi wants Nick to star in his movie. Javi's written a script, and what I love about it is when Nick finds out about that, he's like, "Send me the script right now. I'll read it right now." You know, and I really liked that. I thought that was really cool, and it was his agent, Fink, played by Neil Patrick Harris, who didn't send it to him. And just a tangent for a minute there. I love Neil Patrick Harris. I have no other than wanting to work with Nick Cage and maybe, Pedro Pascal a little bit. I don't know why he took this role. It's such a toned down minor role for this guy who has just massive showmanship and, tends to do these really kind of big characters, to just be this like corporate agent guy. I don't know. I'm not sure why he did it.
I don't know. I feel like they toned down. I don't know. I feel like they were playing a lot of these side characters kind of toned down to not take away from, or to give a better disparity between Pedro Pascal and Nick Cage and everybody else, because the CIA characters were not really that interesting. They were probably like the least interesting part of the movie for me, along with Neil Patrick Harris. And I think some of that is by design, to just give it a big, like I said, a bigger disparity. But
and I agree with you there. My question is then just like, why hire these actors? Why bring in people that the audience will know?
If they want to do it, why not? I mean,
well, right. And that's where my question came from for NPH, is just why, maybe he just really wanted to work with Nick Cage.
I think that's probably pretty likely. I mean, I think everybody there really wanted to work with Nick Cage. I don't think Tiffany Haddish was acting that much when she was freaking out when she saw Nick Cage. They were probably literally just filmed the first time the two of them met and used that in the movie.
I'm good with that headcanon.
Yeah, cute. Exactly.
I'll take that. But yeah, so Nick doesn't like the script. He reads it. Well, it's not that he doesn't like it. He likes it, but it's not for him. He's not going to do it. So he offers to write a movie with Javi. And that's where things for me, their relationship just, I think, like really takes off. Now they're collaborating together to make this movie. And I just love how they did a very Edgar Wright thing in this movie, where they explained what's going to happen to the audience in the movie.
Yeah.
Right. And Edgar Wright does that a lot, especially in the Cornetto trilogy. And they did that right here, where the movie that they write together is the movie that we're watching. And I don't know, I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, I think that was great. Yeah. I don't have any issues with that. It was not expected necessarily, but definitely it was a good reveal when you kind of figure that out.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun, because it takes these, regular people. I mean, they're still very wealthy, but like not action star people, and they turn them into these action heroes in the film. And it's just, then at the end, of course, it just goes totally off the rails. And now you're watching the actual movie that they wrote. Right. And so it's just kind of like layers on layers, which is just, I really love that kind of craziness.
I mean, I like that too, but I also think that was one of my least favorite parts of the movie was you don't actually get to see the real resolution as to how that ended. You only see this like, super actioned up, like,
but that's what happened.
Blockbuster. He caught a knife and then threw it in the sun. Come on. No, that's not actually what happened. There's a reason why they only showed that part of as the movie at the end.
He had to have done something to get away.
I'm sure he did something, but we never know. That's what I'm saying. That's what my problem is. I would rather have seen at least at some point what actually happened and have it be something that was nowhere near as cool as that. And because I think that would have been way more funny to have it be like they just made it super cool because it's Nick Cage, but that didn't actually happen that way. Like he talked his way out of it or something instead.
I mean, they could have had some fun with it, right? Like, so they cut to it, they do the scene as we see it, right? And then when everyone's applauding and then they're talking after the show, someone can like say something about how, maybe his daughter, right? Kind of like, bugging him a little bit, says like, it's not quite how I remember it, Dad. And then it cuts back to what actually happened. I think that
Yeah.
could have been really fun. But it did throw me off at first because like I was not expecting to see like Demi Moore. That just kind of threw me off. But
Yeah, that was weird. I actually didn't recognize her at first because I don't think I've seen her in a movie in a long time. So it was a little shocking. I was like, who is that? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Crazy. I mean, it
Right.
worked, but yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. It threw me off for a second. Like for a brief moment, I got really confused.
Yeah, I think it was intended to be that way.
What was happening, but
yeah,
I'm glad that they didn't kill off Javi though. I thought that that's what they were going to do. Yeah. And turn it into this like kind of sad thing, but they didn't. Like it kind of ends on this really happy, positive note. Javi gets his big movie with Nick Cage, and Nick learns all these big lessons, and he's hanging out now with his daughter and I guess still ex-wife. I mean, maybe they patched things up.
It was a little ambiguous in the end there, but yeah.
Watching the brilliant Paddington 2.
Debatably brilliant.
But it was sweet. I mean, sometimes a happy ending is fine.
Sure. Yeah, I had no problem with it being a happy ending. I liked Javi a lot, and because he was innocent and you were led to believe that he was guilty the whole movie, I wouldn't have liked it very much if he had gotten killed off, because that doesn't seem like a very fair ending for a guy that was really just trying to make friends with Nick Cage and had maybe been wrapped up in some crappy stuff, but he hadn't actually like been the problem. So
yeah. Now there's of course all the spy stuff that goes on. We didn't really talk too much about that. Really only one scene for that stands out to me, and that's the scene where he has to break into the security room. Right. And so he's supposed to break into the security room and like hack the cameras. And he accidentally doses himself with some chemical that is that knocks you out over the course of however long is necessary for him to
for the movie. Yeah, because they say that it should knock him out in a few seconds, but he like just barely touched his face, which I guess is their justification for why it took so long to actually like make him go unconscious or whatever. Because the idea is that he slaps somebody with a full hand or whatever to stick it to their face or whatever part of their body that he hits. And that's why it goes fast. But in this case, he like just barely touches his face. So it takes longer for it to come through.
That interaction is really great. That back and forth. I touched my face. I think I touched my face. Well, did you touch your face? I think I touched my face.
Yeah, it was good. And then him having to get back in to get the antidote. And her having to say, what did she say to get him?
Action.
Action. Yeah, that's something like that.
He's a trained actor.
Yeah.
What I appreciated about it is he doesn't do a lot of physical comedy. That's not really a thing that he does. Like his roles are usually they're serious action roles or they're dramatic roles. He doesn't really do comedy that much. And it was kind of fun to see him lean into the comedic side because I think he is a really funny guy. And we just don't get to see it very much.
I mean, there's some comedy in his history, so I'm not super surprised. But yeah, it is nice to lean into that a little bit in this movie and his more old years. I mean, not that he's elderly or anything, but he's getting up there. So physical comedy probably takes its toll a little bit more now than it did back when he did more of that type of thing. The Vampire's Kiss era and some of those. But yeah, I was happy to see that too. He did a great job with that.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. Are there any other aspects of the movie you want to talk about before we give it our rating, our Cage rating?
I mean, not really. I think we covered most everything that I was really interested in. The car chase was there a couple of car chases? One with Javi's car and then the one at the end? I don't know. Well, they were both well done.
Yeah, but the one in Javi's car is not really a car chase because nobody's actually chasing.
Right. Yeah, that's true. But they treat it like a car chase.
They do.
Yeah.
They do treat it like a car chase. My nitpicky side of me wants to be a little annoyed because they clearly damaged that car. And then when they pull up to Javi's place, it's totally like pristine. But
I did love that they kept, referencing that or letting Nick Cage drive because he did his own stunts and got in 60 seconds. That part was pretty funny to me. And that was like, they didn't slap you in the face with it the whole time, but if you were just watching and that he was basically always the one driving because after that line was said earlier on, yeah, I thought that was great.
It is really good. That was, oh, I did forget the scene where they swap shoes. So after they find out that they have to kill each other, right? And it's really tense, and because they each know they have to kill the other one, but they don't know that the other one is going to do it. And they take the long drive up to where the cliff is, and they swap the shoes. Is just like this like really great endearing moment between the two of them about just how great they are together. And then they have to go and kill each other, and Javi's so surprised when Nick pulls the golden guns out and wants to kill Javi. He's so confused and so surprised.
Well, it was a little confusing for me too. Like, did Javi just keep these guns loaded in this room, or did like Nick Cage have to go find the guns and then go find some bullets for him?
I mean,
it's a little weird.
I thought a little bit about that too, because at the same time, like, what kind of gun did they really use in the movie? Like, did they use a real gun?
They reference that in the movie. Yeah, they reference it in Unbearable Weight. They say, that you used real guns in that movie, and Nick Cage like says it at the same time he does, because they wanted to make it clear that they were real guns.
But is that actually true?
Yeah.
Or is that just for the movie?
John Woo movie.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's how he did it, like almost all his movies.
Fair enough.
Nowadays is a big no-no.
Well, yeah, especially, yeah, definitely. But I wasn't sure if that was one of the fictionalized things or not.
It might have been. I don't know. I thought I read something at some point that said John Woo liked to use real guns, so they felt they had the right weight and everything else.
Well, I mean, maybe they weren't already loaded, but maybe the bullets were like also on display nearby because they were like production.
He had the movie accurate bullets.
Yeah, he had the production ready bullets. I don't know.
But then they wouldn't have been real bullets. They would have been bangs.
That's true. I don't know. I mean, there's a bunch of bodyguards and stuff. Maybe he just stole some ammo.
Yeah, he just knocked one of them out real quick and stole their gun, and it just happened to be the right ammo for this other gun. There is more than one type of bullet in the world.
No, there's just the one.
Apparently. Gun bullets. As long as you got gun bullets, you're good.
Yeah, you're fine. They're all interchangeable.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to be nitpicky. That was just like something I was thinking about in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, like,
and Javi would know, right? Like, if he didn't leave them loaded there, he'd be like, well, I don't leave those loaded, and we don't have anybody that uses 9mm ammo at my place, so I know that you don't have any ammo in those. Maybe
he doesn't know what his guys carry.
Or maybe he was panicked in the moment and trying to figure out why he got guns pulled on him, even if they aren't loaded.
Well, but Nick does use the guns once they're found out, right? Yeah. And everybody shows up to kill both of them, and they team back up, because they don't want to kill each other. That's, then he's actually using the real guns. Now, does he ever reload? That's a separate question.
Real guns don't ever need to be reloaded, Derek.
Yeah. Well, that's what the Game Shark's for.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cheat codes.
Anything else that we haven't touched on?
No, sir.
No. Okay. So we are going to be doing ratings on all of these movies. Each movie gets 2 different scores, and then the movie shows up on our Cage-o-meter graph of Cageness. And so basically, one score is quality of the film, right? Is it a good movie?
Would the lay person enjoy it in general? Yeah.
Yeah. Is it, overall good script and good acting and all those different types of things. And then the other scale is the cagey cheesiness of the movie, right? How cheesy and over the top is the Cage. And that's separate from the movie, right? So you can have a bad movie that Cage is just stellar in. You can have a amazing movie that Nick is just totally cheesy and over the top in, right? So these are a quadrant kind of map, right, that these are going to go into. And for sake of argument, the scale here is going to be out of 20. Okay. So that way, a completely mediocre movie with a totally middle of the road Cage would be like a 10-10 on our graph. All right. So that's how that works. And then we're going to post it up on all of our social media stuff when we get that out. It'll go out,
So just to clarify, with the caginess side of it, one is not at all cheesy, very serious. 20 is the ultimate cheesy, or reverse? I just want to keep this consistent for our
Yeah.
listeners.
No. You're right. I think 20 should be like the crazy cheesiness.
Okay. And
Yes.
one would be like the most serious Cage role that you've ever seen.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
So just because it's a low score on that one doesn't mean it's something that people should avoid.
Right. Yeah. And we're not, yeah, that score is not so much like a qualitative score. It's really just about his character.
It's a scale.
Yeah, it's a scale. Exactly. Because I mean, it really just depends what kind of movie you're going for, right? Like Clue is one of my all-time favorite films. It's probably my number one favorite film of all time. That movie is not tight. It is not edited well. It's not dubbed well. It is corny and cheesy as hell. But it's got some of my favorite actors in it, and I find it hilarious. So
I thought we were going to get through one episode of this without you mentioning Clue, but couldn't happen.
Didn't happen. I'm sorry. I didn't know that was a thing.
We need to put a board back here that says there has been 0 episodes since Derek mentioned Clue.
I'll make a graphic for us.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. And then so we'll provide our scores for that. And then another thing that we're going to do. So we have a wheel. We have the wheel of Cage, and it's a wheel that has 15 Cage movies on it. And what I'm going to do is after each one of our episodes, I'm going to spin the wheel, and it will pick the next movie that we are going to watch and discuss here on the show. And then that movie will be removed from the wheel. We'll randomly pick from the remaining pool and get one added to it. I'll use a computer program for that part. So that'll be something. I'll film that. That'll also go out on social media. So you will know what we're going to be talking about next if you want to watch along with us. And yeah, that's it. So Ryan, how would you rate The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent?
It's better than average, but it's not the best movie of Cage, in my opinion. I'd probably put it at like a 15.
For like
maybe
quality.
16. Yes.
Okay. So
yeah, 20 being like the highest quality.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we could have just done this on a 1 to 10 scale, and that would have been simpler.
Well, the reason I wanted to do 20 was because he has so many films. I want to give us some wiggle room so they're not all right on top of each other.
Plus, everybody does 1 through 10. That's boring.
Yeah, and then you start getting like, well, it's a 3.5. Well, okay, well, now we.
I'm thinking like 15 or 16, but I know you and I are going to come to a compromise between whatever our 2 scores are. So I'm curious to hear where yours is at too.
Well, okay, but so 15 or 16
on that one, yeah.
Which one?
Somewhere in there.
Yeah,
on the quality. Yeah, I'll put it at a 15.
Okay, 15. All right. I really liked it a lot. I thought it was a really good film. It was really original and unique, and overall fairly tight. Like my criticisms are pretty minimal when it comes to this movie. So I'm going to go a little bit higher. I'm going to give it a 17.
Okay, so we meet in the middle at a 16.
I think so. So now the caginess. Now this one's a little bit tougher because there's 2 cages in the movie. So you have to kind of think about Nikki as well as Nick.
Yeah. Where are you at on it?
So 20 is like as cagey, cheesy as possible. 1 is like as serious, like Academy Award winner as possible. So I think when you combine in Nikki, you've got the Nick Cage smooches and all that kind of jazz. I got to put this up fairly high on the Nick Cage scale. And, I haven't seen every Nick Cage movie, so I don't want to just like throw it at a 20 or something like that necessarily, but I think it's pretty high. So I'm going to put it at an 18.
Good Lord. Okay. See, I was thinking that those moments are so few and far between that you get the really cagey stuff, and it's much more of like a serious Cage in general. So I was going to put it at like a 14.
Okay, so 14 for you. I said 18. So that puts us also at 16.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. A 16-16 for our first film. That's really interesting.
And we'll show the quadrant. We'll release the quadrant image to show where that sits. And eventually you'll be able to see where it relates to all the other movies that we review.
Yeah, we'll update it after each episode.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's it. So minor whatever you call it, housekeeping stuff. So we are the Coming of Cage podcast. So you can find us on Twitter at Coming of Cage. We're going to be on Facebook and YouTube. You can find all of our stuff right now. If you need to find stuff, we're at the Derreck Studios pages on those, because that is our kind of our production company that does all that type of jazz until we have our own page to worry about. And I don't know if we got like the spinner and some other things. I mean, I don't know. We probably won't be doing like TikTok or anything like that, but you never know.
I won't be, but Derek might be.
Well, your voice might end up on there.
That's true. I'm fine with that.
You know, I'll take out little clips. You
Sure.
know, I don't know if I have the time for that, but hey, we're going to be pretty much everywhere you can get your podcast. You can stream it on the DerricoStudios.com website. We'll be on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Stitcher and all that kind of good stuff. So just, you know, go to our site and you can figure all that type of stuff out. Links will be in the show notes. That's what you call them. Call them show notes.
Show notes.
I've podcasted before.
Once.
Once or twice or 500 times. Yeah, so that's it. Anything else, Ryan, on this one?
Thank God, no.
Thank God, no. All right. Well, thank you to everybody who joined us for the first episode ever of the Coming of Cage podcast. I am Derek. That was Ryan. We will be back. We do this every other week, so we'll be back with another show. Follow us on social media to find out which movie we'll be reviewing next when we do the spinner. We'll catch you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Brilliant. It's just brilliant.
I know. I'm not too worried about the quality. I don't think people listening to this are going to be like, man, you know, if they were just a little bit higher quality, I'd give it another listen.